And welcome to this next tutorial on your client interview, which is a really important part of your NEA in product design. So our objective from this is to identify a suitable client or user and undertake an interview with them to establish their needs or wants. This forms part of section A. Just to give you a reminder, this is about identifying and investigating design possibilities worth 10 marks. It's about 4 pages long, and by now you should have done a mind map and some background research. And we're moving on to our client interview. After that, we'll be doing product analysis, and this should all be concluded by the 14th of July. All these pages ticked off, ready to move on. If you need to catch up on this, you've got to do it in your own time. So how's it assessed? I just want to draw your attention to this band of the mark scheme, particularly this top marks section. You need a user or client clearly identified, entirely relevant to the contextual challenge, and undertake a comprehensive investigation of their needs and wants with clear explanation and justification. What does that mean in plain English? You basically have to interview someone who's very suitable and thoroughly research their needs and wants. If you don't do that, you're going to find it really hard to access the higher marks later on in your project. So it's a really important page, this one. Now, just imagine if your theme was playing games, it might be that you know someone with a child that's learning, and perhaps you've done some research on why learning through play is important. Perhaps you know someone putting on an event and they want some games made. Perhaps you know someone who's really into their computer games, but they're not very good at storing their controllers or discs or whatever. If your theme was storage, perhaps you know someone who works from home who has a cluttered work area. Perhaps you know someone who owns a lot of jewellery and perhaps wants somewhere to secure it. So identify an appropriate client. That's the most important thing to begin. Then go on to conduct your interview. And when you do it, make it really conversational, okay? Lots of open questions, and I'll get into that in a minute. Here's a good example, and you'll see that this person starts with an introduction. So market research is important as it allows us to get an insight into the stakeholder's life, which will allow me to gather information and design my products around them, blah, blah, blah. So that's a nice thing to start with, an introduction. Then with your client, break it down into a profile. So who are they? Where do they live? What are their interests? What's their age? And it's a nice idea to have a picture of them. After that, you can then do your interview and write it up. And now I would suggest recording it on an audio clip and then embedding that. You could film it, although I wouldn't recommend your films being too long because then the file size gets really big. Notice how this has been done, question in one colour and an answer in another. So it's really sort of clear what's question, what's answer. And look how much information gathered. There's loads of text there, which represents quite long answers from the person who's been interviewed. So it's a really well conducted interview, that, isn't it? Ask lots of open questions, allowing the client to fully elaborate on their opinions. Ideally, it would be include a short video clip or audio. It should flow like a conversation rather than being too scripted, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. And then to finish, summarize your key points. What have you learned from doing this interview, and how will these findings impact your actual product development? Here's another example. Clearly questions and answers in different colours, and what I like about this is an actual photograph or video of the client experiencing the issue they've interviewed about, so there's a nice way of doing it as well. Here are some good and bad examples of questions. So imagine the theme was caring for animals, not this year, but this is one from previous years, and then someone just asked questions like this: what's your name? Do you like animals? Would you like a bird feeder? It's just yes/no responses. You're not really finding out anything useful. It's not flowing like a conversation, so try and avoid that. These are examples of closed questions, which means you're restricting their ability to answer. Okay, and the follow-up responses aren't relevant. Here's a much better example. Same context here, but open questions allowing the respondent to say what they like. Like, hi Simon, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your interests and hobbies? And then, I'm doing a project related to caring for animals. Can you tell me your feelings on this topic? You're really open. It's just not trying to gather as much information as possible. Another good thing is we've got responses that lead to follow-up questions, So after an answer, do you experience any issues? It says, well, slugs and snails are occasional pest. And then the follow-up question is, can you tell me a little bit more about that? What specific problems do slugs cause? Yep, so that's a nice way of following up a question with another question. That's excellent practice. Some other suggestions. Imagine the theme was storage and you interview someone who works at home. Good examples of questions might include some closed questions where you're getting them to rank their preferences. So what do they think of in terms of, the highest priority? Is it function? Is it ergonomics? Is it value for money? And that way you can gather a sense of what they really prioritize in a product. You could even show them products, existing products, get them to tell me their thoughts on materials, finishes, that kind of thing. And if you wanted to gather a large range of opinions, you might do a survey. So that's one option as well. It could be a group of users. So following that, if you want top marks, I would suggest having evidence of a site visit. It could mainly just be photographs of the client's home or their work arrangement or whatever it is. And then just your comments writing up what issues you observe. Brilliant thing to do is actually get some video evidence as well of the client experiencing an issue, and then they've just typed it up. Here you can see measuring up of the environment as well. That's a good thing to do. So what do you need to do? Explain what you hope to find out from doing your interview. Identify a suitable user or client for your project. Explain why they're appropriate. Don't forget your client profile, their name, their age, where they live. Write down what information you need to find out and then turn that into a set of questions. Conduct the interview and film or record it so it can be typed later. You could even do it over the internet, WhatsApp or what have you, or Skype. And then take photographs or films of the environment the client is in and make observations about their environment. What issues do you observe? And then you can summarize all that. So some things that are worth finding out: their living arrangement, their perspective on certain issues, what their experiences are, where the product would be, what size they would want, color, preferred material, that kind of thing. And here are some example questions. Notice all of these questions and please pause it if you need. They're really open. Okay, so it's allowing the user to say a lot of information. You're not restricting their options. Don't just ask closed questions which lead to yes or no responses, and don't make your interview too scripted. All right, best of luck. If you need to pause, rewatch this, you can. Yeah, do a really good job at this. It's really important, this page. Thanks, guys.